When we talk about interactive experiences, the main characteristic that makes this media apart from the others is the capacity to acquire some kind of control within. From visual novels to a AAA console game, we need the ability to change the outcome and watch the results of our decisions. Video games have evolved this concept, often trying to expand this characteristic, but the platformer genre is particularly intrinsic in this matter. In the early stages, arcade video games were designed to accommodate everything in one screen. Everything went on the same plane, and progression were presented through the complete change of it, always only moving forward, feeling unidirectional and, because of that, unidimensional. Then, the side-scrollers arrived, and the linear path was slightly modified to a more diverse, but finally, convergent point. The limit was expanded outside of the viewer's point, and the path was no longer there. Instead, you had to unravel it, step by step, and respond accordingly to the changes you discover in the tree from left to right. By the end of this era, the side-scrollers no longer felt like a straight going forward experience, but a truly 2D interaction, being one dimension the scroller fact, and the other the alternative path choosing stable. Then, the technology improvements took the genre by storm, and every developer in the world was, once again, trying to break platformers out of their previous format, trying to innovate, trying to bring their personal perspective about the third dimension. The Mario franchise was the main leader until this point, and, in this moment, Western video game developers start to truly step in the plumber's territory, being the Banjo series and the Crash Bandicoot series are very distinct examples. At that time, PlayStation didn't have an iconic representative of platformers, so Naughty Dog decided to present its own version of the genre. They kept everything previous games had created: level selection, forward-moving characters, one defined objective, reach the end of the path. But they still needed an expansion, a selling point other than graphics, and that twist was mandatory obstacles approach. Across the three first games, Crash starts as your typical platformer boy, dealing with enemies by jumping over them or hitting them with its trademark attack. But then the enemies evolved, and you no longer could always select the same button. Now you have to jump, spin, dash, stomp accordingly. Crash itself keeps growing, acquiring perpetual, no longer temporal, new abilities. Crash Bandicoot was a transition, and, for better and for worse, it ended up like something in between. Yes, the movement was amplified by the third movement axis, but still unveiling itself as a 3D homage to the side-scrollers, rather than something else. Then, the duo crashed the party. Rare, under the Big M protection, created their own 3D platformer and finally decided to give its true third dimension by making a cohesive interconnected world centered in two principal aspects: exploration and continuity. Exploration because, unlike its predecessors, the Banjo Kazooie series is not about going from point A to point B, but about exploring a world to unravel its secrets. Whenever you start a level, it's just you and the characters living in it. You have a mission, collect all Jiggies, but there's completely different ways to achieve this goal in each level. At the beginning, you know nothing, but by the end, you end up completely immersed. Continuity, because the action is never interrupted. Every time you achieve a goal, the game resumes as nothing else has changed. You do not exit the world. Not only that, but there's some interaction that may repercussions on other worlds, especially in Banjo-Tooie. Also, the story always keeps going forward, as nothing is retconned in Tooie, and all your abilities and every event in the past is still present in it. You see progress as one thing slowly advancing. Some could argue that Mario 64 already did this, but every time you start a level, you obtain a preview and description of your objective. Every time you get a start, you are thrown away of the level, and every single level exists in its own universe, making the overall castle an stylized level selection, rather than a full connected world. And don't get me wrong, I love all these games and I don't feel blind by nostalgia, since as a child, I didn't have an N64. Instead, I played the Crash game in the PS1 as a child. I played Mario 64 and the Banjo series until I was 16, with a lot of games already under my belt. For me, Mario feels like the prototype of the 3D platformers, Crash like the reminiscence of the 2D genre, and Banjo as the standard for every future release. Naughty Dog and Nintendo got the message and took some of these aspects in their future games. Unfortunately, Rare died. At least for me. I truly love this video game genre, and I hope it keeps evolving as it has until now. This has been the All-Arounder Geek, Master of Nothing, Apprentice of Everything, and remember, this is an amazing time to be alive.